One day Jesus was on a journey. He ended up walking through the town of Samaria. If you were Jewish, visiting Samaria was not good for your social status back in Jesus' day. But Jesus did not care because Jesus was on a mission. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, gee, Colby, what is up with this town of Samaria, and why are so many people against it? Well, I'm glad you asked. Thank you so much. That is a great question. Samaria was full of people who Jews did not get along with. Samaritans had a completely different way of approaching and viewing the world than the Jewish people had at the time. They were two groups divided by race, social class, and the way they practiced religion. Jesus took a big risk just being in Samaria. While in Samaria, Jesus decided to find a well just like this one. Well, their wells were much bigger. This is just an example. So I don't want you thinking that this little well supplied the whole town with water. But who knows? He went to this well so he could get a drink of water. When Jesus arrived at the well, he found a woman there getting water all by herself. I need you to know that at this point in time when Jesus arrived at this well, it was high noon. Now that you know what the watering habits of Samaritans were, what does this time of day, with this woman being there at this well, tell you about her? The reason why it's important to know that this woman is at this well at high noon was because it was muggy, it was humid, it was the most suffocating heat you could ever think of. Typically, nobody went to this well at this time of day because of the unbearable heat. Imagine this woman's surprise when Jesus approaches her at the well. She was hoping to not have to face anyone by going at this time of day. As we learn more about the story, we eventually see that this woman's making choices society says were unacceptable and shameful. It's a huge understatement to say that her and Jesus were different in their thoughts, actions, and beliefs. When Jesus found this woman at the well, like this one, when Jesus found this woman at a well like this one, he could have approached this woman in several different ways. He could have ignored her. Have you ever been walking past a kid that's different and you just keep your eyes glued to the floor, or you keep talking to your buddy like you don't see that person? He could have made fun of her. We've all, guys, been in a situation where we had a decision to be nice to someone or to make fun of them, and we chose to make fun of them. Jesus could have avoided her. I can't tell you the lengths that I went to avoid people in my life just because I didn't want to interact with them. But the cool thing about Jesus is what he does next. And so we're going to go to the actual verse to get the real story. When the Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" Now guys, before we go any further in the scripture, I want to ask you this question. Why would a guy who could walk on water ask a Samaritan woman for some water? Does that make any sense to you? I thought about this a lot as I was getting ready to visit with y'all, and this is what I settled on. It was Jesus' way of approaching her. Most people came up and just started yelling at her and judging her and different things like that, and so he asked her for help, for a question, as a non-confrontational way, just to make her feel comfortable. The next verse says that his disciples had gone into town to buy food. What I couldn't figure out why this statement was made known to us, but then I kind of have a question for you. Do you think that approaching those that are different than us is easier on them when we don't do it with our crew behind us, around us? Do you think just one-on-one conversations are a little bit easier than having to be surrounded by all your friends? And then the final verse that we're going to go over today, guys, is a powerful one. It says, "This Samaritan woman said to him, 'You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?' For Jews do not associate with Samaritans." See, what Jesus was doing here, guys, was so different that this woman felt the need to make him aware of the labels the world put on the both of them. "You're a Jew, I'm a Samaritan," is what she was saying. The simple act of Jesus asking her a question was so foreign to her that she did not know how to respond when she was simply asked the question. And I want to point out that her inability to respond was not due to a lack of intelligence, but due to a lack of opportunity and never being asked to help anyone due to who she was. No one ever asked her for help. What Jesus did here was so simple, yet so amazing. Jesus started a conversation. He engaged this woman by asking her a question. He paid attention to her, and what is sad is that this is probably the first time in a very long time that someone treated her as a person or even acknowledged that she existed. Jesus didn't do any life-altering miracles. He didn't walk on water. He didn't heal her. He didn't do anything. He simply asked her a question. He chose to take the first step in getting to know her. Why? Because this woman mattered to Jesus. This woman was probably completely thrown off by the fact that Jesus even spoke to her. In her world, that simply did not happen. But that day, Jesus made a choice to change all of that. Everything that woman had ever known up to this point in her life, Jesus said, I'm going to change that right now. That choice led to a conversation. They talked about their differences, and she even asked him some important questions about life and faith. Towards the end of the conversation, Jesus told her who he really was, the promised Savior of our world. That conversation did not end up changing just that woman's life, but it changed a whole bunch of people's lives. I stand here today telling you about that conversation, and we're witnessing life change as I do so. The Samaritan woman was so moved by the way that Jesus talked to her that she went to the rest of the town and told anyone and everyone she could find. Do you know what happened next? Many Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. Jesus made a choice to get to know her, to have a conversation with her, and despite the ways they disagreed, because to him, she mattered. So what can we learn from this? If Jesus is willing to find a way to love people with different points of view, we can do the same. Everyone matters to Jesus, so everyone should matter to us. When we choose to ignore or avoid someone with a different point of view, we are actually putting them in a category. A category or a group that we think is different than us. A category or group that we think is different than us. To most Jews, the Samaritan woman would have been categorized as unlovable, rejected, weird. And if we're being honest, even today, you and I both have a tendency to look at people who view the world differently than us and put them in the same type of categories as this woman. Unlovable, rejected, weird. But Jesus chose not to do this. Instead, he chose to show that she mattered, and not just to put her in a category, and I think that that is where we have to start. Everyone matters to Jesus, so everyone should matter to us. We can see the value of people rather than just the way in which they're different from ours. And when we do, we can lead to change. Guys, when Greg first started giving me advice about what to say, he encouraged me to tell a personal story from my life that demonstrated how I had a conversation with someone that changed their life. My first thought was like, okay, be like Jesus, be like Jesus, be like Jesus, be like Jesus. Who have I spoken to and who have I changed their lives? Who was I able to acknowledge, to engage, to ask questions of? And I'll be honest, guys, I had a hard time finding that story. And here's why. The reason I had a hard time finding that story is because I relate more to the Samaritan woman than I do to Jesus in this situation. When it comes to conversations with people who are different, I had a hard time finding that story, and here's why. I relate more to the Samaritan woman than I do to Jesus in this situation. What I mean is, from the time I was in kindergarten until the start of my freshman year of high school, I lived in a little bitty town called Saginaw, Texas. Saginaw, Texas is about 6 minutes north of Fort Worth, and it was very much a suburb or a city slicker town. I had a great childhood there. I had my friends, we played baseball, sports, went to the park, fishing, all that stuff. And one night I had a conversation with my dad that changed the entire course of my life. One night he told me that we were moving to a country bumpkin town called Cleburne, Texas, and it was about 30,000 people that lived there. It wasn't really the change in the size of the town that bothered me, since we lived so close to Fort Worth. I was used to a lot of people. It was the culture, guys. See, Saginaw, Texas was very different from Cleburne, Texas. Moving from Saginaw to Cleburne is the same as moving from College Station to Hearne. Because the two places are so different, I did not grow up doing a whole lot of things that the people in Cleburne, Texas did. The people in Cleburne, Texas were fans of Chevy trucks, cowboy hats, and Wranglers. Oh, and don't forget about cowboy boots. See, I grew up with none of those things being important to me. I was different from them. They were different from me. But here's the thing, guys. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, because of the fact that I had my crew. Because of the fact that I had my crew, and I always had friends, I didn't have to make much of an effort to get to know the people who were different than me, because I didn't care. I did not care about getting to know people different than me because I had my friends already. So when I moved to Cleburne, Texas, it was such a culture shock to me. To be honest, I kind of walled up. Believe it or not, I did not talk that much. And yes, I know what you're thinking. It is possible for me to shut up every now and then. But the thing is, guys, I found myself feeling like this Samaritan woman more than Jesus. You get what I'm saying. I related to the Samaritan woman because I needed someone to approach me because I was the different one now. I was very blessed that God put a kid named Parker Sims in my life. See, Parker Sims and I did not end up becoming best friends. We didn't even really becoming good friends since I never actually saw him outside of school. Parker saw that I was different. And the thing that Parker did that I was so grateful for was that he acknowledged that I existed every single day, even when I didn't even acknowledge him back. I had a routine that I fell into, much like the Samaritan woman. Go to school, move between classes and don't say a whole lot. Keep to yourself. I would tell myself, these people don't understand you. And once you added in the fact that I was 5'1" and 95 pounds, I really did not relate to a lot of these big strapping country boys. The thing is, guys, is I made myself different because I thought I was different. My point here is that every single day in second period government class, I would be in my seat as I was always the first one there, the first one to leave. Because I could navigate the halls when there was not a lot of people or kids in them. Get to my next class, just bury my head in my book. That was the plan, and I was a master at it for every class but second period government. My plan was a lot like the Samaritan woman's plan. Get to the well when there's no one there. Get water and not have to see anyone. That was her plan, and she was a master at it every day until the day Jesus approached her. See, every single day, Parker Sims would walk in and say, "Hey, Colby, how are you?" Every single day. My response was always the same every time. "Hey, Parker." I never answered his question. Not once did I answer his question. But Parker did not care if I answered his question. Parker just wanted to make me feel acknowledged, to make me feel existed. See, you guys, what Parker did was the exact same thing Jesus did. Jesus was watching for someone to help. Parker was watching for me. Jesus engaged this woman's at the well. every morning Parker engaged me in government class. Jesus listened to this woman. Parker did the same, even though I never really answered his question. Jesus loved this woman. He made her feel valued and that she existed. Parker did the same. Parker showed me love I felt I did not deserve. Parker loved me in a way that even though we did not become best friends, he had a continual impact on my life. Because every single day Parker showed up in government class and asked me how I was doing. And the reason why Parker loved me like that was because everybody mattered to Jesus, so I mattered to him. And I want you guys to take note of this. The steps Jesus took to show this woman that she mattered are spelled out right here. He watched her. He watched for her. He engaged her. He listened for her. He loved her. Well, remember it. It's very easy, in case you didn't notice that. Remember, guys, loving others is vital to our faith in Jesus. And if we believe in him, what is important to him should be important to us. Since everyone matters to Jesus, everyone should matter to us. As you go into your small groups today, I want you to think about this. What would it look like if you could take these 4 simple steps and show love to someone who's different than you? Thank you.